our history of the Ackermans and the Amanas is we were part of the original community that came over from Germany in the early 1800s. They settled in New York, of course, about 1850 and moved to Iowa in about 1854. My grandfather's great-great-grandfather's brothers were church elders, and only one married, so the Ackermans all came through that single line, of which my grandfather came through. They were very much traditional man of people. Remember, it was communal before 1932, so everything, the church had the total say of everything. And after 32, it became a corporation in which everybody received one share, and that share then gave you certain benefits. And one of the benefits of the home we live in was in 1932, wherever you lived, you had the option to buy your home. So this home that we live in today, and I've lived in here 64 of my 65 years, was purchased because my grandmother was the kitchen boss here in 1932. And then when they bought this home from the society on time for $600. We made our wine right here in this building where we're sitting underneath this 150-year-old grape arbor. The rhubarb and the grapes came in the side basement door. We had a little basket press about this big that we would put the fruit in and use a hydraulic jack to squeeze every drop out of it. My first memory is when I was probably 6 or 7 years old picking rhubarb. And then we'd take it and he'd wash it and we'd crush it to go down the basement. And we did that every year because they only made two kinds, grape and rhubarb. So my dad learned how to make the wine from his dad in very, very traditional methods, almost no filtration, or really no filtration. They siphoned, literally siphoned it out of the barrel into the bottles. They had no preservatives at that time. They used alcohol as a preservative. It was just a small business. You know, my grandfather actually ran the sales room, which was right here. It was a very tiny sales room. And somebody came in, he would sell them. In the early days, we just put it up in half gallons. There was no smaller bottles. You either bought a half gallon or a gallon. You know, it was $2.50. That was the price for a half gallon. And so, I mean, you know, we can remember a day when you had a $100 day in sales, you know, you were busy. So, I mean, it was just a very rudimentary business, you know.
There was a buzzer on the door,
yeah,
so that his mom could, you know, be in the house and make supper and, you know, do whatever, and then the buzzer went off and she'd run into the shop and sell her wine and then run back.
My grandfather, he would go from house to house, and they'd have a little sample in the basements, and when we call a little sample, that was a water glass. and so they would go from place to place, and of course everything was in German, so there wasn't any English spoken at this time. So he would take me with him, and I'd sit in the corner, and as long as I didn't say anything, I was allowed to go ahead. We took over. Linda and I came here in May of '74, and my dad and mom only made grape and rhubarb wine, to two kinds. So in May of '74, we bought dandelions that very first month. And because my dad said, this is terrible stuff. You know, he says, this dandelion is, I said, relax, it'll be okay. But we made dandelion, and then we actually went to Kelowna and picked our own strawberries that first year. And they had a grower down there that after the season, we were allowed to go in and pick strawberries. So we got everybody we could, remember, and went down there and picked strawberries until we were just so sick of picking strawberries we couldn't stand it. And then we wildcrafted elderberry in the fall, and we did that for 25 or 30 years, wildcrafted. We picked literally tons of elderberry. What we would do is we would drive the country roads, and then we would mark them on the county plat, and for each 10 bushes we'd give them a number. So if there was 10 bushes blooming white, it'd get a 1, 20 bushes would get a 2, and then we'd go back. And elderberries, after they're done blooming, it's like they disappear. You can't hardly see them, but they're hanging those little upside down purple clumps. And
they usually like to grow right along a creek, and the itchweed is like over your head, and yeah, it's not easy to grab those.
No.
And then your hands get absolutely purple.
Yeah, we picked
beautiful
drums,
color.
55-gallon drums full. We'd send out 3 trucks, and in each truck would be 6 or 7 drums, and we would fill those drums with elderberry. We would drive hundreds of miles. I mean, we went to Makokana to picking elderberry because we, you know, once we'd travel, whenever our travels, we'd go travel in June and we'd look for the flowers and then we'd mark them and go back and pick them. The tourism kind of in the Yamanas was changing. The introduction into Iowa, the introduction of casinos had changed a lot of things. There were other players in the tourism field, big players. So as the outer villages of the Yamanas were suffering even much more than the large village of Amana, because in the large village of Amana, there's a main street and the sidewalks, and you kind of go from shop to shop to shop, and it's very customer friendly, where here in this village, there's only 2 or 3 businesses. We had talked about it and said if we got the right facility, we would entertain a move there. And in '98, I purchased a property on Main Street that was actually an apartment house, but the location was great, right next to the Ronneberg restaurant. A friend and I completely remodeled that apartment house. We tore it apart, added on, did all the work ourselves. So I literally had 1 carpenter myself. It took us a year, but we remodeled and built that facility on Main Street. And we closed here and one day grabbed the bottles off the shelf, put them on the shelf, and opened the next day. And it was probably the single most best thing we ever did to A, for have the business out of our home, and B, that we had much more traffic. Because we specialize in fruit wines, most people don't realize that we were very variety specific fruit. I mean, we had gotten that technical. In other words, in a red raspberry, we knew what variety of red raspberry we wanted. So we would go to the grower and pre-price them. And same way with blackberries and apricots, and you know, we knew exactly which variety and what grower we wanted. We tended to build long-term relationships with our growers and not worry so much about the price of the fruit, and it worked out really well for us. Cassie and Zach actually approached us at a
some trade show. Of course, our first choice was leaving it up to our children, you know, and our daughter from Colorado, they seriously thought about it. They seriously thought about it, and then it was one of those deals like, you got to decide. They were seriously considering to move back, but they love Colorado, and we said, you know, if you really love Colorado, stay there. You know, there's no, you can do a business anywhere. So when we finally got the answer that no, they were not interested, we went back to Cassie and Zach.
Pretty seamless transition. I mean, Les and Linda were excellent to work with, and were very open and shared everything with us, and it was great. Cooper's been involved when we've gotten fresh fruit in. They like to sample it right from the barrels when the fruit comes in. And they get to try the juice after we've pressed it. They get to try that.
I like how you get to taste the fruit.
Our kids have picked dandelions the last 2 or 3 years. Yeah. They've earned a few dollars picking dandelions.
$5 a gallon. Sometimes we like to get at least 5 gallons, and then the whole group, we split the money.
I think part of it is the fact that the family over the 60 years have really strived to find the best product to make the wine. You know, who can we buy the best cherries from to make the best cherry wine? I think you take pride into the fact that when you take a drink of that blackberry wine, it tastes like you just ate a blackberry off of the vine. Rhubarb tastes like you ate rhubarb pie. So a lot of it has to do with the product that you purchase. Yeah, we're not taking the cheap approach. We're buying the best quality fruits out there. I just say I'm very proud of the history that Ackerman has built over 60 years, and we're very anxious to continue that history and continue it for years to come. And never lose sight of who started it, and their passions is our passions to continue.
The Ackerman brand that we sold was so dear to our hearts that we just wish them the best.
Yeah, it's exciting, it's fun, it's different. You know, there's not very many places that do this, so it's nice to have something that not everybody else does.
You know, we feel we put it in safe hands. We feel that Zach is a great winemaker. The family is going to go forward.
I'd like to say thank you for continuing to support Ackerman Winery. You know, Les has shared a lot of the history with us and with Zach on the winemaking tradition, and we're trying to uphold that and keep it going and also expand it a little bit. It's so fun to see people coming from all over the country to visit Ackerman Winery because they've been there for years and years, and they just keep coming back, which is fun.
Just want to keep that going, keep that growing, keep the amount of colonies going. It's a really unique thing in our state.
And I think we're going to try to make the wine drinking experience even better at Ackerman. Not just buy it, but enjoy the experience being in the wineries and sitting back and opening up a bottle of wine. We want you to stick around a little bit and share your story, and we'll share our story with you.